Last time we did a story sharing, I talked about Shogun of Crime, and I told you guys how I was trying to take historical figures and events and tie them into our modern day society. Basically tell a modern day story that retold events from the past or retold things that happened previously in another culture and time and place with different people. It was a lot of fun, but that wasn't the only story that I tried that with. There's another, and this one's way, way different. This is my story, The Revenant King. I absolutely adore this story. It's one of those stories that I've been really plotting out and playing with for a long, long time. I'm so disappointed because I'm only 6 chapters into the story, but part of that's because I just keep wanting to rewrite chapters 7, 8, and 9 because I just keep coming up with new ways I want to approach it. It's just a lot of fun. So today I'm going to tell you guys about The Revenant King, what the story's about, basically where I got the inspiration for it, and all the goods and bads that have come from writing it. All right? Let's get right into it. The story opens up in New York City in the modern day. We have a series of murders that are going on. Apparently, there is this vigilante going around killing off a bunch of crime lords, rapists, mob bosses, murderers, all that kind of stuff. A lot of criminals are being killed. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The murderer who's doing it has already identified themselves. Count Dracula. Every time he makes a kill, he always leaves behind a calling card saying, "This is a warning to all criminals and scum of this city. Count Dracula is coming for you." Now, they have dubbed this killer the Dracula Killer, and there's been a whole force in the police department dedicated to capturing and catching the Dracula Killer. No one knows who he is, no one knows how he operates, no one believes he's a real vampire, although there are some things that make them a little creeped out. People who claim to have seen him or survived his attacks claim that he entered through as like a black mist or as a flurry of bats, or even though they shot at him, it's like the bullets just never phased him. And every time they find a murdered victim, they always find them either drained of blood or with a stake through their heart. Like, there's a lot of vampire iconography and connections to what this Dracula figure is doing. So they're all kind of worried and wondering, just how far will this guy go? What's he really after? How come we can't catch him? Where's our first lead? They're struggling. Now, the story mostly takes place from the perspective of a young detective named Detective Kim Min-seong. And yes, that is a Korean name. She is a young Korean detective, but she's got her own baggage to deal with. See, she's been put on the Dracula Killer case with the Dracula team to try to figure out who Dracula is and bring him to justice. But a lot of people don't trust her. Why? Because she's got her own baggage. It turns out that her brother used to be a cop himself, but he was a dirty cop. He did a lot of bad things and abused his position in the police to do bad stuff. She was instrumental in turning him in. She actually found out what he was doing and turned in her own brother. So this puts her at odds with her family, who think that she should have stuck by her brother. This puts her at odds with cops who are loyal to the badge, who think that, hey, you got to stick by your fellow cops no matter what. And this put her at odds with everyone who, because the people who didn't like that she turned in her brother, but this also puts her at odds with anyone who thought she might be just like her brother. She might just be trying to get clout with the police department. So she's kind of got enemies on all sides, you know. She's not loyal to her family because she turned in her brother. She's not loyal to the badge because she's associated with her brother. Like, all this kind of stuff. She's not a liked person, even though she just wants to be a good cop. She wants to be a good police officer. And the chief, who's running the whole task force, thinks that she might be able to redeem herself and get some, attention and some appreciation again if she helps bring in the Dracula Killer. Plus, the chief knows something. He knows that someone in the task force is a mole. He thinks that the reason this Dracula Killer can manage to get all of these crime lords and bosses is because he has access to police files to know who's on their most wanted list and know how to reach them. He thinks that they've got a mole in the department, and if she's not a very liked person, this mole might think that she's someone they can rely on since she doesn't have any allies in the department anyway. So he's hoping that she might be able to flush out the mole. So, really big deal there. She starts doing some investigating, but while that's going on, the Dracula Killer is also making his moves. And it's just really fun playing off the juxtaposition between these two characters. While Kim Min-seong is trying to discover who the Dracula Killer is, the Dracula Killer already knows who she is, and he's taken an interest in her. So it's really interesting how I've laid that out. But then it gets worse. Apparently Kim Min-seong finally finds a lead in this biker gang who claims that they know where the Dracula Killer will strike next. And so they invite her to meet up with them and they'll show her where. Turns out it was an ambush, and the biker gang are actually werewolves. Not even kidding, they're werewolves, and they transform wanting to either have her join the pack or kill her. But right before they kill her, because she doesn't want to join up with them, Dracula shows up and saves her and takes her away from there. Turns out Dracula really is a vampire. He actually is a legit vampire. Not just any vampire, though. He reveals he is Vlad Dracula from way back when. He is the historical Vlad Dracula, and he is in the city because there is something beneath the city, some kind of darkness beneath the city that he's been fighting for years and years and years, and he's here to put a stop to it. Now, Kim Min-seong doesn't trust him. She doesn't know what to think of this guy. She thinks that he's dangerous. She thinks that he's full of crap, but at the same time, she also can't deny that those guys, those bikers, just turned into freaking werewolves. Like, how do you deny that? How do you make peace with that? So she kind of has to accept, yeah, this Dracula guy, he probably knows more about the situation than I do. That's as far as I've gotten in the story as written, but I'll give you guys a slight spoiler. If you don't want to hear the spoiler, just turn off the video now, but I'll give you guys a slight spoiler. The whole setup is that this is Vlad Dracula, but also the Dracula from Bram Stoker and his story. But the connection is really unique. It turns out that when Vlad was a child, when he was being held by the Ottoman Empire, Mehmet had vampires and would often try to create vampires amongst his soldiers because he thought that he could possibly use them in his battles against the Christian West. And so he turned Dracula and his brother Radu into vampires. But while Dracula was trying to find a way to undo the curse, Radu embraced the curse and used it to turn all of the Ottoman Empire into his puppet kingdom. Radu started sleeping around, creating whole new offspring from himself, these vampire rejects that Dracula dubs them as. And now Dracula feels it is his duty to kill Radu and all of his offspring. And over the last few hundred years, that's exactly what he's been doing. He allowed people to think he was dead, while in reality he worked in the shadows to take down Radu and all of his offspring. Now he's tracked down the last of the offspring in New York City. You'll love the twist at who it is. And he is here to kill that offspring. And the reason he's going after all these crime bosses and crime lords is either because they are working with this offspring, or he's using them as bait to draw out the offspring. So he actually wants to work with Kim Min-seong to try to be his eyes and ears in the daylight, since he can't come out in the daylight. I had a ball writing out some of these twists and turns about how Dracula approaches this. It has been absolutely phenomenal, and there's so much more to say. I mean, I've only kind of scratched the surface about all the stuff that I've kind of been approaching here. Oh, by the way, spoilers over, so if you had to mute, spoilers over now. But regardless of that fact, I have had an absolute ball working on this story. Now, of course, as always, I want to talk about the inspiration. There were several inspirations. Of course, the historical Vlad Dracula and the Bram Stoker's Dracula were, of course, both inspirations. I drew inspiration from both stories, but there were others. One that I really got inspiration from, believe it or not, was the early 2000s Batman animated TV show called The Batman. I can't remember which year it actually came out in. I'll have to look it up later. But regardless of that fact, I liked it because in the first two seasons of The Batman, actually more so in the second season than the first season. In the first and second season, the Batman is a vigilante that's running against the cops while still fighting against the underground. And I like that dynamic of Batman having to work against both. But in the second season, Batman has to work alongside a detective named Detective Yen, who is the only detective in the department who actually trusts Batman and actually wants to help him so that they can help keep the city safe. And I thought that's a neat dynamic where you just have this one cop, this one detective who's willing to work alongside the vigilante. And I thought instead of making it Batman, let's make it Dracula. And I thought that would be very fun.
All I've seen the last few months, the last 2 nights, has challenged everything I ever believed in. It all comes down to one thing. Gotham needs the Batman.
You could lose your badge for thinking that way. If you ever need me.
Doesn't look like we'll be working together anymore. I requested a transfer to a desk job. Need a break from the action.
Really? Probably just as well. I prefer a strong, silent partner.
Now, that was another major inspiration. There are others, very minor ones, like I got a lot of inspiration from the TV show Blue Bloods, which is a great cop show, by the way, highly recommended. It stars Tom Selleck in a really great role. God, that man's awesome. But a lot of cop shows helped inspire me. The TV show Arrow, which was supposed to be this DC Green Arrow show, it got weird after season 1, but I did enjoy what I saw in season 1, and I thought some of the ways that Arrow presented himself was kind of cool. So there was a lot of inspiration that went into this, as you can tell. Now, as always, I want to talk about the goods and the bads. The goods that came from this are pretty clear. I got to play a lot with historical stuff, a lot with literary stuff. I got to try to find ways to tie together Count Dracula from Bram Stoker and historical Vlad Dracula and try to find a way to merge those two. I got to experiment with writing a different kind of writing style, like doing juxtaposition a lot, like telling the story from two different perspectives, from Detective Kim's perspective and from Dracula's perspective. I got to play around with Kim herself because she's going through so much baggage. We've talked a lot about Dracula and what he's doing, but we haven't really touched on Kim. Like, how does she feel about all this? She is walking into a world that she barely recognizes, while also kind of rejected by her own world. And of course, I'm also playing around with the ending. I've been thinking about how I want to end this story. Do I want to end it with triumph? Do I want to end it with sorrow? Do I want to end it with something kind of in between? I've got a lot of ideas, and it's been so much fun just playing with this. But that's probably the biggest takeaway that I had from it in terms of good things, was just how unique it was to juxtapose Kim Min-seong's perspective with Dracula's perspective. And what I really like is, in the actual book by Bram Stoker, Dracula doesn't appear a whole lot. He's actually very much in the shadows most of the book. You don't see him so much as you feel his presence. You see what he's doing. And I wanted to do that in this story. I've kind of kept Dracula very much distanced. There are only 2 chapters so far where he makes a physical appearance. And that's been kind of fun. Like, he's one of the main characters, but you barely see him in action. You feel what he's doing, though. You feel what he's doing. You're seeing it all from Kim's perspective, and that has been very entertaining. Now, of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about some of the negatives of the story. What are some things that I've had to learn that maybe I need to work on? For one thing, it's dedication. I think that one of the problems I have is I get distracted trying to play with different areas of the story, like how much I connect to the historical and how much I connect to the literary, and I think that's distracted me from making it its own thing. I think that's one area. There's also the idea of, again, and this is a bad habit of mine, I rush things. I get an idea in my head, but it's several chapters away, so I try to rush aspects so that I can get to the thing I want to do. And if I can give any advice, and believe me, I have to take my own advice on this, I think that one thing I need to work on more frequently is pacing myself. Yes, there's a lot of great things I want to get to, but I still need to take the time to work my way to it. I need to pace myself and gradually get to the big payoff. Otherwise, it's going to feel rushed. Like, I think that I could have gone deeper into the detective side of things as Kim is working to uncover more about Dracula before I had Dracula reveal. Because keep in mind, Dracula has revealed himself to Kim in chapter 6. That feels a little early, don't you think? That feels a little early. I mean, of course, they're still going to do more stuff. I mean, Dracula and Kim have a lot of stuff to work on together, including their trust, because neither one fully trusts the other yet, because Kim is trying to capture him, and he is asking her to trust him on these monster issues, so there's that. But another issue that I think the story has forced me to recognize in terms of my own writing is, figuring out how much of the juxtaposition I use. And what I mean by that is this. There are chapters where I feel like I focus way too much on Dracula when I feel like he should take a bit of a backseat. Like, I'll give you an example. There's a scene where Kim Min-seong is sitting in like a diner and she's talking to a friend because she's on the investigation and she's trying to get her first lead. But the diner owner asks her about her family. And I didn't take enough time for Kim to really explore how her family is doing. Because keep in mind, her baggage is that she arrested her own brother for being a dirty cop. Her family does not like her. Her family is not pleased with what she did. They feel like she betrayed the family. The cops don't like her because some think that she is, just anti-cop because she didn't stand by cops. But others think that she shouldn't be trusted because she was so willing to accept, because she had a brother who did this, So I really needed to take the time to explore that baggage more. And sure, I could explore it over the course of the story. I could explore it over the course of the tale that I'm telling. But I did not, she kind of dismissed the question and went right back to the Dracula investigation, which I feel like was a missed opportunity to explore Kim a bit more. Another good example of things that I could improve on. But yeah, that is the story. I have loved working on this story. I still love working on this story. I've gotten some great ideas. The ending, I've already come up with how I want to do the big final confrontation between Dracula and the Offspring. Oh, it's going to be great. And before anyone asks, as I've been designing this vampire, what kind of vampires are we looking at here? Are we talking vampires like Twilight vampires? Are we talking 30 Days of Night vampires? Are we talking Alucard from Hellsing level vampires? And to answer the question, mostly Alucard from Hellsing, mostly your classic Dracula, like transformation abilities, turning into mist, turning into bats, changing appearances, hypnotism, all that kind of stuff. Those are kind of the areas that I've been looking at. So anyway, gone on about this plenty by now. I hope you guys have enjoyed. I hope I haven't bored you to tears. Thank you guys so much for watching. And what do you guys think of this story? Please let me know down in the comment section below. And as always, I will see you in my next video. Take care.